Week 16 of the 2025-26 NBA season is over, which means it's time to run it back. This is Run It Back, NBA Week in Review. I'm Jose Salviati, editor at thepeachbasket.net, and this is the show where we recap the week that was in the NBA by sharing the only objective NBA power rankings, the stats standouts. That's the best to do it by average in the week that was. And then we look at viral NBA news in a segment we call Full Court Press. Finally, we highlight the marquee matchup for the week to come. We start like we always do with the only objective overall top 10 NBA power rankings anywhere. You can read more about how we get to these rankings and see the entire list at thepeachbasket.net. Let's take a look at the top 10 at the conclusion of week number 16. We start by saying that no teams moved in and out of the top 10 this week, which is really odd. It's the second week in a row this has happened. All of the shuffling happened entirely within the same group of top 10 contenders. Another call out, two teams in the top 10 were perfect this week. No losses. Let's find out what teams pulled that off this week and what it did for their ranking. Let's start at number 10, where the Toronto Raptors were 2-1 in week number 16. A good record, but not good enough to keep them where they were last week. That was number 9. They dropped one spot to number 10. The Minnesota Timberwolves were 1-2. They also had a rough week, but it cost them a little more than it cost the Raptors. That 1-2 week in week number 16 saw them drop from number 6. They come in at number 9. The number 18 or the Denver Nuggets, they had a rough week, 1-3 in week 16, but it wasn't enough to drop them any lower than where they were last week. The Phoenix Suns also had a rough week, 1-3, but it did cost them. They dropped from number 5 to number 7 this week. The New York Knicks didn't have that kind of problem. They were 3-1 in week number 16, and it saw them move all the way up from number 10, in large part because everybody else had a rough week. So the Knicks are surging. They are the number 16. The number 5 belongs to the Houston Rockets. They were 2-2 in week 16, and it did cost them one spot in the ranking. They dropped from number 4 to number 5. The first perfect team in week number 16 are the Boston Celtics. They were 4-0, and they move up, as they should. From number 7, they are the number 4 team with a bullet coming after the top contenders in the East. The number 3 team also went 4-0, but they're not in the East. They're in the West. The San Antonio Spurs were perfect in week number 16, and they did not move up because those top 2 teams have got a lot of room between themselves and all the other contenders, but the Spurs are coming up quick. They're number 3 for the 7th week in a row. The number 2 team for the second week in a row are the Oklahoma City Thunder. They were 2-2, and it didn't cost them much, but like I said, they had a lot of cushion. So number 1 team went 3-1 in week number 16, the second week in a row. They are at the top. That is the Detroit Pistons. That's the objective top 10 list for week number 16. If you want to see where all 30 teams landed this week, please visit thepeachbasket.net. Now let's shift our focus to the players. These are the best to do it by average in week number 16 of the 2025-26 NBA season. The best by average in shooting, rebounds, assists, blocks, steals, points, and game score. We start with the best score. The Ant-Man played 3 games in week number 16, averaged 34.7 points to lead everybody. He was the top scorer in the association. The top sniper, the best 3-point shooter, was Trey Murphy III. He also played 3 games and averaged 7 made 3-pointers per game to lead everyone. The top field goal getter was Jaylen Brown. He played 2 games and he averaged 13 made shots to lead the association. Let's move to rebounds. Donovan Clingan played 3 games and averaged a pretty remarkable 17 rebounds. He and Domantas Sabonis both averaged 7 offensive rebounds, but the shout-out goes to Clingan because he played 3 games to Sabonis' 1. The top defensive rebounder was Jusuf Nurkic. He played 1 game and pulled down 13 defensive rebounds to lead everybody. Isaiah Collier was the top assist man. He played 3 games and averaged 14.3 assists. Robert Williams and Keyshawn Gilbert both averaged 3 blocks, but Robert Williams gets the shout out for playing 2 games, where Gilbert only played 1. And we have a bit of a logjam in the steals department. 3 players averaged 4 steals: Norman Powell, Kevin Porter Jr., and Jamal Meshack. Now the shout out goes to Meshack, a player you may not have heard of. He played 3 games, averaged 4 steals a game to lead everybody. This is a late second round pick playing for the Memphis Grizzlies, averaging an unimpressive 2 points, 1 rebound, and just under 1 assist per game. But he had himself a heck of a week defensively, averaging 4 steals. Good for Jamal Meshack. Now, the top game score goes to Donovan Mitchell. He played 2 games and he had a respectable 27.6 game score. And of course, he's got himself a brand new teammate in James Harden. Those are the best to do it by average in week number 16. Now let's take a look at week number 17. The best matchup is in the East, where the number 1 Detroit Pistons will travel to Madison Square Garden and take on the number 2 and very hot New York Knicks. The Pistons have been number 1 in the East in our objective power ranking since week number 4, but the Knicks are coming on strong. This is an important game in the East as teams start to think about playoff seeding. I'll certainly watch that one. That should be a great game. Now we're going to end with a segment we call Full Court Press, where I ask AI for its thoughts on viral trending NBA press news as we head into week number 17. And this is what it came up with. It always happens like this, doesn't it? After all of the rumors, the big guns don't move. Giannis has stayed put, but the saga gets louder in Milwaukee. There was a blockbuster guard swap. I don't know that I would classify it as a blockbuster, but Harden and Garland switched teams. Anthony Davis, I feel bad for him. Wish him nothing but success and health. He is in Washington, where the Wizards might have a little bit of a plan. If their team can stay healthy, they might shock some folks next year. The Warriors pivot from Giannis and chase Porzingis. It's a bit of a gamble because there's another guy who has trouble staying healthy. And then they called out these quiet super teams, right? There was no big super team developed or created at the trade deadline, but there was what they're calling a noisy middle class, right? The Lakers, the Knicks, and the Celtics all added pieces to retool. And that's interesting, right? The Lakers added Luke Kennard, certainly an area that they need in shooting. The Knicks added Jose Alvarado, and the Celtics shored up their front court by bringing in Nikola Vucevic. Now, I want to focus on that noisy middle class because that's interesting to me. Now, casual NBA fans definitely know Michael Jordan, Magic Johnson, and Larry Bird. But more diehard fans of the NBA are familiar with the game and contributions of Steve Kerr, Michael Cooper, and an aging at the time but still impactful Bill Walton. Without their under-the-radar contributions, Jordan, Johnson, and Bird would not have as many rings as they do. That's what makes these middle-class moves so interesting. Did any team bring on the guy that will make a difference in this year's playoffs? In 1987, Michael Thompson was traded from the San Antonio Spurs to the Los Angeles Lakers. Larry Bird knew what that meant for the Lakers. He said of the trade, if San Antonio needed money, we would have sent them money. But to go and help the Lakers like that is just terrible. Larry Bird was right to be concerned. Thompson was not a star on that Lakers team, but he was instrumental. The Lakers beat Bird and the Celtics as Thompson thrived as a backup center. And that's exactly the kind of player every NBA champion needs. So who'll be that guy this season? Did the Lakers pick him up in Luke Kennard? Did the Knicks with Jose Alvarado? Maybe the Celtics with Vucevic? Now, personally, I have a soft spot in my heart for Jose Alvarado. He's exactly the type of player that can cause problems in the playoffs. He can hit a big shot, get a big steal. Y'all remember Gerald Henderson? Or just get under the skin of the other team. The Knicks have a few things left to prove this season, but in Alvarado, they have someone cut from the same mold of these great but unsung NBA Finals players. Now, the Knicks have to get there to see if Alvarado can be their secret weapon. I'm excited to see how far they go, and I would love to see the Knicks in the finals. Let's see how it plays out. That's it. Week number 16 of the 2025-26 NBA season is in the books. Join us again after week number 17 when we once again run it back.